US President Donald Trump has his eyes on Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan.
We're going to leave Afghanistan, but we're going to leave it with strength and dignity. And we're going to keep Bagram, the big air base, one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it to them for nothing. We're trying to get it back, by the way.
First of all, it is Trump we're talking about here.
Ghaffar Hussain is a political commentator and geopolitics expert based in London.
Trump is always bombastic and making outlandish statements like, taking Canada and taking Greenland, Panama Canal.
To be honest with you, Canada only works as a state. We didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. We need Greenland for national security and even international security.
This begs the question, why is Bagram so important for Trump? The United States abandoned the airbase when US forces withdrew from Afghanistan in 2021. Bagram was the biggest US base in the country. It was originally built by the Soviet Union in the 1950s, but expanded by the Americans. For nearly 2 decades, it was the center of the US war effort to oust the Taliban and hunt down Al-Qaeda after the 9/11 attacks.
War in Afghanistan was never meant to be a multi-generational undertaking. We were attacked. We went to war with clear goals. We achieved those objectives. Bin Laden is dead, and Al-Qaeda is degraded in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's time to end the forever war.
With Trump's call to take Bagram back, is he trying to reverse his own legacy?
I highly doubt that the Taliban would ever agree to allow U.S. troops back on Afghan soil. They didn't fight U.S. and NATO forces for 20 years just to allow U.S. forces to return now that they're in power.
Lisa Curtis is the director of the Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for a New American Security. She served as Deputy Assistant to the President and National Security Council Senior Director for South and Central Asia during the first Trump administration.
And we also have to remember it was the first Trump administration that negotiated the Doha deal that stipulated that U.S. forces would fully withdraw from Afghanistan by May 2021. There was never any mention in the agreement about U.S. forces staying at Bagram Air Base.
After his election, then U.S. President Joe Biden continued the plan for withdrawal that he inherited, but with an end date of August 31st instead of May. Trump has been highly critical of the Biden administration's chaotic U.S. exit from Afghanistan.
Just went through the Afghanistan total disaster for no reason whatsoever.
But now that the U.S. has fully withdrawn, it's 4 years later, there's just no question of the U.S. going back into Afghanistan. That is something the Taliban would not accept. If that's something that President Trump feels was important, he should have had his negotiator negotiate a better deal with the Taliban. So the question is, if President Trump knows that asking the Taliban to give back Bagram Air Base is a non-starter, why does he keep repeating this?
Trump's argument for getting Bagram back is the base proximity to China.
But one of the reasons we want the base is, as you know, it's an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons.
One of the things that Trump hinted at, and other people have mentioned, is Bagram Air Base has a way of keeping China in check and having the China nuclear weapon sites within range. Now, on deeper inspections, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally anyway, because China's nuclear sites are actually spread all over the country.
So far, this is Beijing's response after Trump suggested that U.S. troops could return to Bagram.
中方尊重阿富汗独立主权和领土完整。阿富汗的前途命运应掌握在阿富汗人民的手中。我要强调，在地区渲染紧张、制造对抗，不得人心。希望各方为地区和平稳定切实发挥建设性作用。
Now, China does have interest in Afghanistan. This is the other thing that does need to be said. China was the first country to appoint an ambassador to Afghanistan after the US withdrawal when the Taliban took over.
Before the US withdrew from Afghanistan in August 2021, Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor, now the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, had written something about Bagram Air Base being important for the United States.
In an op-ed to Military Times, this is what Mike Waltz wrote. In addition to giving up the only airbase in the world located in a country that physically borders China and Russia's southern border, the Biden administration will also give up a key strategic foothold along Iran's eastern flank and along the nuclear-equipped and unstable Pakistan.
So perhaps this has planted the seed of an idea in Trump's mind about Bagram Air Base. But the problem is, that what Mike Waltz said about Bagram was before the U.S. withdrew, and it was an attempt to try to convince, Biden administration officials to keep a limited number of U.S. forces in the country.
Given Bagram's strategic value, can the U.S. reassert its influence in the region? Or is it too late? Trump did hint that the U.S. could retake the base with some kind of Taliban consent.
Trying to get it back because they need things from us. We want that base back.
I don't think America has anything that the Taliban really want right now. If they want loans, China can offer that. If they want, aid, China can offer that. So they don't really, China's kind of muscled America out, if you like. So they don't really need America for anything.
A Taliban official quickly shot down the idea of the US reoccupying Bagram. Zakir Jalal, a Taliban foreign ministry official, said that military presence has never been accepted by Afghans throughout history, and this possibility was completely rejected during the Doha talks and agreement. However, doors remain open for other forms of engagement. Just a few days afterwards, Trump issued an ultimatum to the Taliban.
Are you willing to rule out U.S. boots on the ground to get Bagram back?
We won't talk about that, but we're talking now to Afghanistan, and we want it back, and we want it back soon, right away. And if they don't do it, you're going to find out what I'm going to do.
Trump followed up with a social media post. He warned that bad things would happen if Afghanistan did not give back control of the airbase.
It's not so strategic that the US is going to go and engage in military conflict or aggressively take the airbase. I don't think it's not a existential issue for the US.
He's hinting that he's going to take some kind of extreme action against the Taliban in the near future. So it really raises a lot of questions. It may be that he's trying to ratchet up pressure on the Taliban for something else, say perhaps the release of U.S. citizen Mahmoud Habibi, who the Taliban took hostage 3 years ago and continue to wrongfully detain him.
Since Trump's return to the office in January 2025, at least 4 U.S. detainees have been freed. The Taliban recently claimed U.S. envoys had agreed to a prisoner exchange as part of an effort to normalize ties between the U.S. and Afghanistan. In fact, they announced it on X just a few days before Trump's Bagram remarks.
It's very important for President Trump to get U.S. citizens who are being held hostage anywhere in the world to get them freed. So, this is a top priority for him. So that is perhaps what is behind this.
Experts DW spoke to, however, said that in the unlikely scenario that the U.S. is allowed back in Afghanistan, it would be for counterterrorism missions.
It may be that they allow some intelligence officers to be in Afghanistan for a limited period of time to carry out some joint counterterrorism mission. But even, that seems also to be a long shot. And even if something like that did happen, the Taliban would likely want to keep that out of the public eye and keep that secret.
Experts explain that the US and the Taliban have a common enemy in groups like the Islamic State Khorasan, or ISIS-K. ISIS-K is the Afghan offshoot of the so-called Islamic State. It was formed in 2014 by a faction of defected Taliban and Al-Qaeda members in Pakistan and Afghanistan, who adopted a more violent interpretation of jihadism.
This is a group that is an enemy to the Taliban. It's also an enemy to the United States. So there is mutual convergence in seeking to combat ISIS-K.
It's highly unlikely in any case. But if it did happen, from the US point of view, it allows them to keep an eye on ISK and regional militancy. As we know, a lot of terrorist groups do operate in that region.
Why the Taliban have outright rejected the idea of US troops being back in Afghanistan? They are open to improving ties.
They'd want a relationship with, I guess, most countries around the world, European, American, certainly big countries like America.
So far, Russia is the only country that recognizes the Taliban as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. The international community has strongly condemned the Taliban's treatment of women and girls. Under Taliban rule, women and girls have become invisible. They are banned from attending schools and universities, for example. If what Trump is trying to do with his Bagram remarks is gaining an upper hand with the Taliban, experts say Trump should instead pressure the Taliban to stop erasing women and girls from public life.
The issue of whether or not to recognize the Taliban, provide them with international legitimacy, or establishing diplomatic relations, that needs to be conditioned on the Taliban improving the rights of women and girls.